Hi, this is Anne Marie Zanzal,
And this is Tonda McKay.
and we are here for our 6:30 Wednesday evening discussion, 6:30 Central Time. And tonight we are going to talk about getting through your first lesbian breakup, which I know some of us have experienced in this group. So, is it hard to get through your first lesbian, or second lesbian, or third lesbian breakup, Tonda?
It's very hard.
Yeah. So one of the things I'd like you to do, if you would like to comment live on this broadcast, you have to go to streamyard.com/Facebook. If you want to comment with your name, if you just want to comment as user, that is absolutely no problem. And Tonda and I are going to be hosting a workshop on April 23rd, which is a Saturday from 1 to 5 p.m. Barb Rollinson is our contact in the comment section. So if you would like a copy of the PDF that we're using about a guide to getting over your first lesbian breakup and to understanding the grief and loss around it. So getting back to my first question. What's it like to get over your first lesbian breakup and your second and your third? Why does it hurt so much? Well, let's talk about the first one.
Well, the first one hurts so much because you've entered into basically a different world, and I don't know how it is now, but you and this person are in this world together. Maybe you're out, maybe not, but if you're not out, then you both have this secret.
Right. Or maybe one of you is out and the other one isn't.
Right.
So there's this secretness sometimes about the first woman that we are with.
And you break up and you can't grieve in front of anyone.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a little while. So for those of us who are new to our community and are, really just sort of starting out, and you may have met somebody, you may have met a woman that you've fallen in love with. You may have a really big crush on somebody that she doesn't know about. But the thing is that in our later in life community, we talk about something called a catalyst. So a catalyst, in science is something that causes a chemical reaction, right? And so for our later in life community, a lot of times a catalyst can be an event. Like some of the women that I have worked with over the years have had divorces, they've had deaths, they've had miscarriages, they've had births, they have gotten sick, their parents have died, their husband has died. But some sort of big life-altering, changing event happens to somebody. And then what ends up happening is people begin to think and reflect about their lives. For me, I've also found that, believe it or not, the pandemic has been an incredible catalyst for people thinking about their sexuality or acknowledging their sexuality for the first time in their lives. And then there's the catalyst that's a person. So as I said, that can be somebody that you have fallen into an intense love relationship, someone that you have confessed your love to and it is not returned, or someone you never tell and she is just the object of your affection and she has no idea that she has opened up this piece of you. So why is this so hard when it ends? We're not going to talk about when things go well and stuff like that. What we're going to talk about is when it ends. First of all, what happens between two women sexually when they,
that's a different thing all. Sexually, it ends when you break up, and that's what the problem is.
Yeah, no. But
that's what part of the problem is.
Well, the thing is that women are nurturing and caregiving, and also too, a lot of us who've been with men our entire life, all of a sudden we are experiencing something with a woman that we have never experienced before. So, for example, letting like all of a sudden having our emotional needs met. How How about that comedian that you love so much that talks about this, that little story?
I forget
who it is.
Yeah.
Danielle Smith or something. I don't know. Anyway. But what does she say? She talks about
she said if you just show there's a clip on YouTube about it. If you just show minimal attention to them, they will just lose their minds. And that it's really, really easy to date straight women because they're not used to being paid attention to.
Right. And taken care of. And her joke is that she got her girlfriend a bouquet of flowers, and it lasted, the residual effects for that lasted for about 4 weeks afterwards. So a lot of times when women are first dating other women.
Oh, Barb's got it for us. Yeah. Thank you, Barb.
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes when women begin dating other women or sleeping with other women for the first time, a lot of times things are happening that have never happened before in their life. Can you think of some things that happened to you? Like for me, I thought like love and passion was something that was in the movies. I didn't think it existed. And then once I slept with someone, I realized that like, oh my God, love and passion, and especially sexual passion, was real. How about you?
Well, here's what I think the quintessential reason that it's so difficult is because you have your best friend and your lover rolled into one person.
Right.
Your best friend that you talk about all of your, trials, all of your life events with, and then you have your lover. And, I don't know a lot about straight marriages, but it doesn't seem like they don't share, straight marriage, they don't share as much. But in a lesbian relationship, you're very, very intimate and close. And when you lose that, whether you're out or not only do you lose your lover, you lose your best friend that you would talk to about it.
Right.
And when you try and, because of the crappy way that straight people can be, when you try to talk to them, they don't give you the same level of empathy
as if you had
for your sorrow. And so that's crappy too.
Well, yeah,
they're like, oh, well, it's just a lesbian relationship. What's, it's not the same as a divorce
or a straight relationship. So sometimes you do not get validated at the extent of the loss that happens. And I like what Dot said, because it is very true. Women make oxytocin. And so when you're with another woman, the sense of the feel-good chemicals that happen, the chemical reaction that happens between the two of you can be really, really intense.
Well, and you become, I don't want to say addicted because it sounds like but you basically are have withdrawals physically. I'm not talking about mentally, but your body physically has withdrawals.
And that's what we say in this. And when this will hurt for a while, but not forever, because women can get addicted to the oxytocin and the euphoric highs that come with their first lesbian relationship. And it's really, really true. And so it just and the thought of not having that in our life anymore can be so overwhelming. And especially for those of us who have already lost some other things as well. Because if you have a first lesbian relationship and because of this relationship, you have decided to leave your marriage, to get divorced, or a whole bunch of, other things. And so you're having all these losses with that. And then you throw on top of it the loss of a relationship that you maybe left your marriage for, maybe we left our marriage for, maybe that we thought was going to be a forever relationship if we didn't leave our marriage for, but it was the first person we fell in love with. It can be actually very devastating. And like Tonda said, there is also it really is physical. I'm curious if any of our people listening tonight have felt that that like physical withdrawal. Like not that Tonda and I broke up, but we did date long distance. And I remember that when, we'd spend a weekend together or a week together or something like that. And then she would go away. And it was like very physically hard not to be with her after, that we had just spent a whole week or weekend together or something like that.
And lesbian breakups come in all different sizes, believe me, I know. But oftentimes they also, whoever you're breaking up with kills you with kindness. I was with someone for 13 years, and she just, to me, out of the blue said, "Oh, I think I'm going to move back home." And I'm like, "What?" What? And then she proceeded to call me every single day. And I couldn't tell her not to call me. It was just like a knife in my heart every single day until I finally got some distance from it.
And you actually told her not to call you.
And anymore. I actually told her
not to call her anymore, call you anymore, because it was actually too painful. And so one of the suggestions we give when somebody is breaking up, and there are a couple of resources on my website. There's one calling Getting Over Your First Lesbian Relationship, and one, they're both with me and Miriam Grace. Miriam Grace is someone who had a catalyst and writes a lot about it. And so if you go onto my website, emeryzanzal.com, you can see those. There's the blog piece, and then there's also, if you look up the Miriam Grace episode in my podcast, you will see that we've talked about this before. But it's really interesting because Miriam is like, you have to break off contact, and I know that sounds incredibly hard and painful, and it can almost feel overwhelming, but it is really important, because even if you're checking their social media and stuff like that, it can keep the pain alive. And so breaking off contact is a good way for you to get some distance. And so you can go through your withdrawals, right? And I know it just sounds like, for those of us who've been in straight marriages and straight relationships where we didn't have these kinds of feelings, it can feel really odd, but I bet straight women have these feelings. And so, getting distance between the person that you fell in love with, your catalyst, the person who really made you realize that you might not be straight, is really, really important.
And there's no perfect way to do it. I have literally been in relationships where it's like, okay, this person is hurting me, and this is just me. Maybe this is me. I'm going to let this person keep hurting me until I can't take it anymore, and then I will have to move on. And so sometimes when we break up, or they break up with you, maybe you will see them and it'll be hurtful, and then you'll go away for a weekend with your other friends, and you come back and maybe you will see them again, and eventually you will say, "This is just too hard. I can't do this anymore."
And also, too, one of the reasons, besides the chemical reactions and all that stuff, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it's also, she's the tie to your queer identity. When you first realize that that you may not be straight, that person, whether it's a she or maybe it's someone who's non-binary, that person is your tie to your queer identity before you develop your own queer identity, and that takes a while. I remember when Tonda and I were dating, and I'm just going to say, Tonda and I will be very honest with you. We had some really rocky times in the beginning. We never broke up, but we did have some really rocky times. And I remember being terrified of us breaking up, because I at that point, I knew she was my only tie to my queer identity. And so the thought of, and also physically, the thought of losing her almost made me want to throw up. So it was like, I was like conscious of it too, that if I lose this person right now, my queer identity is not developed enough for me to stand on my feet. Now, if we had broken up, I would have developed a queer identity, but it was really, really scary to think of her not being in my life anymore, you know? So one of the things Tonda mentioned in the beginning of the episode is that if, for those of you who have had a catalyst, or, you know, your first lesbian love, and nobody knows about it, and that relationship ends, that's called disenfranchised grief. It is a grief that you cannot talk about with anyone because nobody knows. And that can be almost, it can almost feel overwhelming. It can put us into depression and make us struggle with a lot of feelings about what happened. So if the catalyst relationship is, you're still in your marriage and you had a relationship with somebody, and she, the relationship ended and nobody knows about it, and you're still in your marriage, like being in your marriage now just feels so uncomfortable almost. And then if it's somebody that like you left your marriage for and nobody knew you left your marriage for this, there's also the grief around that. And also you're grieving your divorce and all the changes in your life as well. So there is a lot of grief around this. And, I'm a grief counselor, and one of my thinkings around grief is that, the grief doesn't go away. It doesn't get smaller. It's just that we change and we grow around that grief.
I think that with people that we break up with, that it does eventually. It's not like somebody who died and you can't, if you break away from that person, then maybe a year or 2 years, and that's why a lot of lesbians are friends with their exes, is because after a while, you're still in this insular community, and this person knows you. You're still good friends, and so a lot of lesbians are friends with their exes, but not at first.
No, it takes a couple of years. Yeah, it does. It does.
And also, I remember when my ex broke up with me, I was just showing Anne Marie
looked at the date.
A list. I made the day that she did it. I thought, I'm not going to make it through this. There's no way I'm going to make it through this. And I wrote a list out, and we looked at the date, and it was over a year before we met. So I gave myself a very long time.
So it was on September 14th on 2015 that she made this list. So what did you put on this list? Because we also, if you're interested, the lovely Barb Rowland has done a great self-care worksheet. And if you would like to get that from her, reach out to her. But she literally wrote, and it's still here, so I'll verify it. She literally wrote down what she needed to do to get over this relationship.
Because
you've done that before too, right?
Because I didn't know how I was going to get, but it was late enough in life, and I had enough therapy that, thank God this breakup wasn't in my 20s or whatever. So I put exercise, because that sounds weird, but when you exercise, you also have oxytocin. You also get yourself tired. So you're not, and like, if you go and exercise, you're not going to ruminate on a bunch of things because you're tired. The other thing was to write your feelings out, don't have contact with your ex, but if you want to write her a love letter every day and then burn it in the fire, do that. If you want to write all these letters about how you feel, do that. That is cathartic.
Can I add something too? So in my grief work I do with people, a lot of times when they're grieving a relationship like this or divorce or something like that, I ask them to write the timeline out of the relationship from all the good things and all the bad things, and you put all the good things above the timeline and all the difficult things below the timeline. And when you have it in front of you, sometimes you realize that things weren't as good as you thought they were. I did that with my ex-husband when I was grieving that relationship with my own therapist. And all of a sudden I saw all these negative things that I had sort of forgotten about. Like I really sat down to write about it. And then the next step in the exercise is to burn it. Because that's a ritual. We're human beings. We need ritual. So when we throw something in the fire, it's very cathartic for us. Okay, go.
Ask for help. I was lucky enough to have been an out lesbian for 100 years. And I was also unlucky in that most of our friends were both of our friends. The way she did it, I sort of got all of the friends because it's kind of a crappy way that she did it. But ask for help. And if nobody knows that you're gay or that you were in that relationship, find a therapist. Go and talk to someone or coach.
Mm-hmm.
And a coach is probably even better because it's something you're literally going to have to grieve and get through. You can't figure it out, and there's no problem to solve there. What is done is done. And for me, I put ask for antidepressants. I had to get on antidepressants to put a floor to my grief.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just put read great books, plan trips for the future. I mean, think about the future because I remember one time it was a breakup where it wasn't as painful as this one, but I was grieving it because I was much younger and it was very, very hard for me. And I was talking about all these things that I was going to miss about the relationship. And the therapist said, well, you will have those again. It just won't be in this relationship. And she was right. You will have all those things. You will have an amazing love affair with someone else. You will have a closeness with someone else. You will have the intimacy with someone else. And that is comforting to me.
And that's so funny because when I was grieving up the breakup of my marriage, and Tonda and I were dating at that point, she said that to me. She goes, "You'll have all that stuff again," because at that point I couldn't see that I would have all those things again. Like couples dinners and outings and friends and all the things that I had when I was a married woman. And I'm a married woman again, and I have all those things again. So that is really like, it's so funny. Tonda and I do the support groups. Tonda's been helping me recently, and every woman always says to us, "Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to be alone." And I'm like, "Girl, you are a catch. You are not going to be alone." And I want to say that to all of you. You're all catches. You're not going to be alone. I know that, especially if you don't want to be alone and are looking for somebody and want to be with somebody. So even though this first lesbian breakup can be incredibly hard, you can get through it. You really can.
And I will say this too about I know this is going to sound weird, but see the beauty in this pain. You can be incredibly creative. I see things, I saw things in that pain that I wouldn't have normally realized. I mean, most great art is either great joy or great sadness, is a reflection of great joy or great sadness. And so you won't always have that. You won't always be in this room of this grief. And so if you write poetry or you
write songs,
or you write songs.
Yeah. I started writing my blog in response to I didn't have a lesbian breakup, but at that time, but I was just so heartbroken about everything that was happening in my life. That's when I started to blog about the experience because I just needed to, and now I go read back at them sometimes, and I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of pain there.
And for me, I thought that I would just never find someone that I wanted to be with, and the best chapter of my life happened after this. I have the love of my life, and the most wonderful marriage. It was right after marriage was legalized, and I was like, "Hey, we can get married." Then she broke up with me 2 months later, so that was really hard.
And the thing is too, I think Dot is echoing a lot, and the Facebook user who posted at 6:55, you learn a lot of. I know even no one wants this to happen, but if it does, you end up learning a lot about yourself and who you are and what you want in a relationship and what you don't want in the relationship. And, I'm really curious for those of you who are going through this breakup or perhaps a little past it, would you have missed this experience? Because would you have rather have not had the experience? Because I'm going to bet most of our community learned so much from them experience, but also realized who they were created to be as human beings because of the first woman that they fell in love with. So, as Tonda said, as Dot said, as Facebook user said, you learn a lot from these experiences, and they can provide you with phenomenal personal growth.
And I'll say this too, not only does the grief from this, whatever breakup, your first breakup, you realize, you think about it when you have the joy of the next one. Anne Marie and I often look at each other and say, we are so lucky. Just sitting in quiet stillness, we realize how wonderful it is. And neither one of us got there without great pain.
It wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, folks. It was not. So I think that's all we have to say on this subject. And also, what's really good? This group, or any of the other groups that you belong to where people talk about these experiences, because if you go back and if you scroll back and look at all the comments that are coming up, there is a shared humanity about this. So we share a common story, many of us, about finding and falling in love with that first woman and sometimes breaking up with them. And so that shared humanity is really, really important to have. So, if you're really struggling over the loss of a relationship, use the group. Use the group to talk about it, because we have over 1,200 women in the group, and I bet you somebody will say, oh yeah, that happened to me. So use the group, use your resources here. We will help you through your grief, because boy, we understand.
Yes.
Or, excuse me, girl, we understand. Or non-binary folks, we understand. All right, loves, is that it for tonight? All right, she's going to a birthday party and I'm going to do a group. So have a wonderful evening, and we will see you all next Wednesday night. We haven't decided the topics, but we're going to put a whole bunch up in the next week or so. All right, see you soon all. Bye-bye.
Bye.